Illustrated by this entanglement, relational dialectics is a theory that proposes that social life is a dynamic knot of contradictions or a ceaseless interplay between contrary or opposing tendencies. This theory was created by Leslie Baxter and Barbara Montgomery of the University of Iowa and was officially published in the textbook A First Look at Communication Theory by M. Griffith. M. Griffith later interviewed Baxter about the relational dialectic theory. When asked what the gist of the theory was, Baxter replied, "The gist is to recognize that all communication is the interplay of differences. Differences is the seed of the manner, and they're all in interplay and often competing and in opposition." According to Baxter, from a position of relational dialectics, you have to have tensions in order for a relationship to grow. It keeps them from being boring, and your output is often change, creativity, spontaneity, and continuity. Baxter views the interplay of opposites as a positive, not as a problem to be solved. When Griffith went on to ask, "What would you say to someone who is worn out in a relationship or friendship?" Baxter said, "We often fall into the romance of believing that relating is easy. It is not easy. It is effortful. How people choose to cope with the interplay of these differences is essentially how a relationship becomes vibrant." There are four concepts of relational dialectics. Totality suggests that people in a relationship are interdependent. When something happens to one member, it often affects the others, just how like one baby's crying influences the others. Then we have contradictions, which is the dynamic interplay between unified opposites. For example, partners in a relationship can desire intimacy and distance. The next concept is process. This implies that relational dialectics can be understood through various social processes, and it is through these social processes that the fourth concept is produced. The concept of praxis focuses on the practical choices individuals make in the midst of the opposing needs and values, and during these tensions can create, recreate, and change the nature of the relationship. The differences are still there, but they are beginning to shape the relationship into something achievable. There are three dialectics in a relationship, which include integration and separation, stability and change, and expression and non-expression. Within those three dialectics, there are both internal dialectics, or dialectics within the relationship, and external dialectics, which are dialectics between a pair and their community. For this presentation, we will just be looking at the internal dialectics to study the impact of opposition on relationships. These include connection and autonomy, which is often paired with integration and separation, which is essentially the desire to be together or independent. This can look like one person saying, "We should do more things together," or saying, "I need some alone time," in opposition with another person or a battle within themselves. An extreme example is Kelly and Ryan from The Office. Kelly is ready to jump in and do everything with Ryan as a couple, while Ryan really appreciates his space. Another internal dialectic is certainty and uncertainty. This is something everyone faces in their daily decision-making process, but the tension within relationships is a desire for predictability within relationships and a desire for novelty, mystery, and spontaneity. This is a part of the stability and change dialectic. For example, one person might say, "Let's go to Olive Garden like usual." But the other says, "No, Olive Garden is getting boring. Let's shake it up and go somewhere else." The third internal dialectic is openness and closeness. This dialectic deals with the battle between vulnerability and secrecy, which is within the dialectic of expression and non-expression. The dialogue might include, "Let's talk about our feelings," compared to, "I'd rather not share this with you." Now for the critiques of this theory. One major critique of the relational dialectic theory is that most of its support comes from anecdotal evidence, which is essentially the opposite of scientific evidence. Much of the scholarly research behind this theory is from isolated adventure subjects. There are very few studies that look at the whole population. Some scholars suggest that this theory likens a close relationship to staying upright on a unicycle. You are always working to keep from falling. Within this critique, a personal critique that I have is that it implies that all relationships are meant to last. It is assumed that people always have to work through the differences, and if they don't, they are essentially giving up. When really, yes, sometimes it is beneficial to work through differences to allow a relationship to grow, but sometimes it is more beneficial to just walk away from the relationship or even distance yourself from the friendship. Relational dialectics offers a close look at the impact of opposition on relationships and shows how a dynamic knot of contradictions might not be so bad after all. Consider these dialectics the next time you experience opposition in a friendship or a relationship.